At the edge of the world, there's a city barely holding itself together. Behind it, nothing but wilderness, ruins, and things that should have stayed buried. For the past year, my players, their mercenary company, the Iron Price, has been trying to survive there. This is how it went, and what Pulp Hummock Press's Gods of the Forbidden North can actually deliver. All right, hello, dear viewers and fellow watchmen. In this episode of our Gods of the Forbidden North series, we take a detailed look at Skaalburg, the second largest city in Tetherian, and one of the campaign's major frontier settlements. I'll also recap the Iron Price's visit to Skaalburg, um, as well as their first real hex crawl foray into Tetherian. Whether you're preparing to run Gods of the Forbidden North, looking for inspiration for your own Sandbox campaign, or simply following along with the Iron Price's adventures, this video explores how Skullberg serves as both a memorable settlement and an outstanding launching point for further adventures across the Forbidden North. So, this was the Iron Price's first real application of player agency. They went through that opening adventure path, sort of. They found the Tomb of Morcall, which they were already directed to do, and then returned with moderate success. What were they going to do now? To be honest, they floundered a bit. As I mentioned in the first video, I instituted one-to-one time in this campaign. It was meant to organize the campaign, make it kind of easy for me to keep track of time, but more importantly, I wanted to give my players a chance to develop a character that existed in the world through downtime activities, projects that they wanted to begin and see to completion, so it wouldn't take up adventuring time when we got together. But as many of you who've tried to experiment with more open world campaigns, I'm sure you've run into a similar problem. Essentially, one-to-one time and this maximized player agency was a bit overwhelming for them. Let's be honest, for the past 20 years, at least, probably longer, D&D has taken the approach of providing adventure paths rather than an open sandbox when designing content. Many of you probably experienced that deer in headlights look when asking that open-ended question of, what do you do now? I think my players in particular, have got used to having a direction. Big bad is an evil castle. Go take him out, right? And they come to rely on it. It becomes a crutch. And so when you ask that question, what do you want to do now? They sort of balk. There's this uncertainty. They hesitate. That certainly has been happening in my campaign. I still have a player after a year and a half who doesn't really know what to do. My only advice is to stick to it. This is a skill, exercising player agency and truly stepping into the shoes of your character and deciding what to do when there's no adventure to be had takes time to develop. Try not to get discouraged by the silence you may receive from your players when their downtime orders are non-existent. I certainly was getting a little discouraged a few months ago, half a year ago. But after a chat with some friends by a fire over beers, I discovered they were having the time of their lives. They just weren't 100% sure what to do. And they're very overly cautious players. If it helps, you can institute a random generator for random stuff that happens to them. I roll it when I don't get downtime orders for a particular player. And then I consult the chart and I let them know, well, this is what happened to you this week. 1 in 6 of the list of D on the D100 chart is beneficial. They might have some good luck. 1 in 6 is very detrimental, including hit point loss and disease. The remaining are just inconvenient, such as getting pickpocketed and losing some gold pieces. I didn't want something that was going to be overly complicated or involved. It was just meant to encourage the players to actually do something. Otherwise, this mundane stuff was going to be happening to them week by week, while everybody else is doing cool things like developing their blacksmithing skills, building a thieves guilds or negotiating high-level contracts with the movers and shakers of Valkengard. So, what did the Iron Price do with its newfound freedom and treasures from the Morgul's tomb? Well, Benedict the Norse cleric really didn't know what to do, so he walked around with the black mask that they found at Morgul's tomb. He received a lot of nasty looks for the Enaruk, and he tipped off to the cult of the Magoth that the Iron Price has Morgul's Black Book simply by being foolish and silly with his character. Um, he didn't realize it at the time, but that's precisely what he did. In retrospect, I should have had a few more bar fights happen to him. But that being said, during this downtime, he did spend a lot of gold carousing, which bought goodwill for the mercenary company. Redon, the Enaruk thief, learned the Stinging Meadows was the site of a great battle between the Hadean army and the armies of the Skull God. He also learned that Robber's Gate at Valkengard was the location where a psychopath was executed. It's a place where a lot of such punishments occur for the city. As a quick aside, there is a rumor table in the first book. I'm not a big fan of it, I'll be honest with you. It's written in first person perspective, so you're to read it to the players as if they bumped into a drunken merchant or guard or whatever, and you hear firsthand what the rumor is, but they're awfully vague. There's not a lot there. I think I would have much rather had 100 bullet points, all leading to different hexes and adventure locations, and then just trust the game master to liven it up a bit. Ultimately, the Iron Price went to the job board and discovered Bramritch Gilver, Hadean noble, is looking for help. He has a business called Gilver Import. It's located in the Sea Market District. Basically, he's offering a reward as over 2,000 gold pieces worth of saffron stolen from him. The player who's running Grimdall the Dwarf ended up actually negotiating a really strong contract. They not only were they going to get a significant amount of gold pieces for the job, they convinced Gilver to pay for supplying their caravan that they were going to use to travel to Skaalburg, and but in addition, they were to find Siras, this bandit who is believed to be behind the theft. Quick aside, the job board, I mentioned it in previous videos. This is a great way for players who are looking for a direction to find that direction. And more importantly, if your job board is diverse enough, it doesn't always have to be merchants looking for, help. It could be anything. On the job board, there is a notation that a group of dwarves had disappeared in the mountains and people wanted to know where they were. There was a reward for finding them. This made an interesting decision point for the Iron Price. Rather than go do the noble thing and look for lost dwarves, they went to work for the merchant. Going off deep into the wilds may have been part of it, because they are very nervous about going too far from the main city. In any event, they started their hex crawl, and it was a pretty easy one, as they were just following the main road to Skullberg. They were attacked by some strange cat creatures native to Tetherian. Thanks to a lucky reaction roll, the cat creatures were not hostile. But then a group of 9 wild dogs attacked them a day or two later. After killing 2, a failed morale check sent the wild dogs yapping away. Then they came to a cavern system that contained kobolds. They were attacked by 18 of them. They actually contemplated running with what they could, but Hjalmar, the magic user, cast sleep, and it ended up becoming a massacre for the Iron Price. They took out the kobolds pretty quickly. Recovered some treasure and kept going. One of the cool things about the hex crawl in Tetherian is it's not just encounter locations and random monster hanging out, like their lairs and stuff. There's these little points that add flavor such as a fork in the road with a sign that they discovered. To the north was Fort Jaldarin and Gankul, a settlement, and to the east was Skullberg, and then to the west was Fort Ivankar, which was crossed out, suggesting that something happened to the fort. Indeed, the road to the west was not kept well, so they easily concluded that Fort Ivankar was an adventure location that they might not be ready for yet. So then they got to Skaalburg. Let's talk about that real quick. Skaalburg is the second largest city in Tetherian. It's got a little over 5,000 in terms of population, a third of which are standing warriors. And the military presence really defines the city. Skaalburg began as a Vulcan military outpost and eventually grew into a permanent settlement. The residents are former soldiers who settled into civilian life as fishermen, fur traders, lumberjacks, miners. The city is ruled by Lady Hadriana Radomir, a powerful sorceress, described as manipulative and completely shameless in her political dealings. Skullberg is much more independent than Valkengard. People tend to favor lower taxes, minimal regulation, and generally want to be left alone. They have, in a sense, embraced the fact that the empire has fallen, and they're doing their own thing. Like Valkengard, Skullberg isn't overflowing with pages of lore in the book. Again, I think Rob Alderman was expecting Skullberg just to be sort of a way station for the players. It is closer to one, if not two, of the major dungeon locations for Book One. It's also located closer to entrances to the underworld. But what you do get in the book is enough to develop on your own. The Iron Price has not yet made a set up shop in Skaalburg, even after a year talking about it. Frankly, I think Skullberg would be an excellent staging ground for a secondary group of adventurers. Indeed, you might even want to have your players start in Skullberg because it's more of a frontier outpost, and there's a lot of military men there. Like Valkengard, it does have a job board. It's called the Mule Board, and it's got bounties and adventure hooks there. One of them leads to the Pinga Mine. My players actually ended up getting involved in the Pinga Mine in a separate way. We'll cover that in a later video. But one of the more memorable NPCs is this half-orc merchant who runs a trading post, Shadwell's Substantial Scroll Secrets. He can actually sell the players treasure maps. This is an excellent way for players, or excuse me, the GM, to seed locations on the map to the players. I certainly will be using this more, especially if the players decide to set up shop in Skullberg. It's just a fantastic tool built right into the system, to the book for you. So you, the game master, don't have to figure out a way to get the players to the Underdark or figure out a way for the players to get to this particular hex that you think would be fun to introduce to the players. Another important NPC is a halfling named Taflin Lari. He actually can be a guide to the Barrow of Eight, which is one of the major adventure locations in Ethereum in Book One. He actually witnessed some goings on there and has a lot of information from the PCs. My players have yet to go to the Barrow of Eight, even after a year and a half of gaming, well, almost a year and a half. In any event, they're going to have to make a decision on that, but that's an end of video for another time. There are two organizations here, the Indigo Shack of Anglers and the monastery dedicated to the Fellowship of the Smiling Cloth. Both are deeply rooted in the politics that are going on in Valkengard behind the scenes. I'm not going to get into detail right now, but I'll just say they're not exactly good guys. The Iron Price did not stay very long in Skullberg. They dropped off their goods, got a little bit of, got their pay, and did some investigating into trying to find the thief. They were able to, thanks to a stable boy and some guards, get a rough idea where this thief Siras might be hiding out. And of course, along the way, they crossed paths with the Barrel of Eight. They didn't know what it was, they just knew it was not a good place. I described it as a strange hill that rises from the landscape like a giant pustule topped with ancient stone pillars. That was enough to have them move on. In fact, it was near the end of the day when they discovered it, and they did not want to camp there. In light of the fact that the wind, it's getting cold and the temperatures are dropping, they pushed on and they did a forced march, and that got them into the next hex. And they found an old ruined tower um, that had lights inside. So they decided to investigate it, and I will quote our party's scribe, who's been trying to keep track of all their doings. It was the easiest assault ever. Basho the monk and Redon the Enorook thief scouted ahead. They found a lone sentry and took him out before he can raise the alarm. Moving into the tower, they discovered the rest of the occupants asleep. It was Siras and his group of thieves. Um, both players rolled well on their move silently checks, and they systematically slit the throats of each of the sleeping bandits. Um, this also set the tone of the Iron Price. These guys are not heroes, they are cutthroat, quite literally mercenaries. Anyway, they found the stolen saffron, and they started looting the bodies, and I rolled randomly for this. And I want to make a quick point here. So in uh, OSR play, we talk about the dice telling the story and not fudging dice and just letting things fall where they may. And we typically talk about that in a negative context. You roll 3d6 down the line and you get a 5 intelligence. You roll for hit points and you only get 2. You, got into a fight with a group of goblins, and a goblin was rolled a natural 20 and killed you in one hit. I would submit to you that this works both ways. I ended up rolling really well for them in their favor for treasure, and we determined that this thief had just robbed and killed a noble and his wife heading to Skullberg, and that explains why there were all these gems, gold, and jewelry. It's mostly jewelry that was found. Anyway, it was enough for them to gain a level, and the Iron Price was feeling pretty unstoppable. So they decided to take on Fort Ivikar at the next session. But we will talk about that later. If you made it this far in the video, please hit like, subscribe, bell icon. Please check us out the second watch on Friday nights at 10:30 Eastern Standard, 9:30. And if you're so inclined to support the channel, would really appreciate membership. Check it out. You get all kinds of benefits, including first dibs on games that Gary, Brian, and I are running on the Discord server, access to videos before anybody else, and we'll be doing some members-only live streams in the future. So anyway, thanks for checking us out. Until next time.